Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. With your heroes, your regular host and the regular hosts. It's me, Tim DeBake, and with me, Sam Snyder.
Pleasure to be here, and pleasure to be home after having been on the road for 3 weeks. Visited, got to visit family over Thanksgiving, as well as attend two No Fluff Just Stuff conferences, Tech Leader Summit and Architecture Conf, both of which were very fun and well put together, which bodes well for our own Code Remix Summit in Miami in May of 2025, as we will be partnering with No Fluff Just Stuff to put on that conference. So I anticipate that it will similarly be at a good location with good food, and obviously the speakers will be excellent.
I am very much looking forward to that one. We have a very good lineup already. I think there's just 2-3 slots left on the program that we're trying to fill in.
Yeah, so if you've done something cool with Open Rewriter Modern, let us know. We can put you in front of an audience and tell the world about it.
Absolutely. I think we have a call for papers open for 3 more weeks, so until January 12th. So be sure to get those submissions in, and maybe you can be the final one in our lineup there. So should be good. Now, as always, we're going to take you through some of the things that are new this week, and also maybe with a slight eye towards things that are new in the past year. Because we've, of course, as you do, at the end of the year, you start to reflect a bit. And I don't know, it's been quite a year that we've done. So, but I'll first take you through some of the weird things new this week before we dive into that more detail. So, as you've come to know, I'll show a couple of tabs here. And the first one is that we just finished up a new release. So if we were anxiously waiting for that last release of the year, then we now have the 8.42 release up there for you. And it contains a lot of smaller fixes. There were already some patch releases that also made it into the 8.41.3 and 2 and 1 as compared to 2-3 weeks ago. But it's mainly been some focus on fixes for the Gradle parser. So if you found that maybe in some cases your project didn't build, or you had 50 projects and 2 of them didn't build, then you should start to see improvements here. Similarly, we've also done an improvement for Maven projects, where Maven is more tolerant than our own CLI was at the time, and our own Maven plugin was. But we're now being more in parity with what Maven allows if your POM is missing but your jar is present. If you've got that well-known message that we couldn't reliably continue building your project, then you should now get those fixes going as long as Maven is able to build your project as well. So very pleased to get that in. And then of course, there's also matching releases of the plugins, and there'll be a matching release of the CLI as well if you're a user of that one. And you can get all of the aligned versions through the rewrite recipe bomb, which I'll put in the chat just now. So that's good. And then, of course, there's always so many things that make it into release, especially this one, because we have a sum up of 3 weeks of work. So I think we closed some 220 plus tickets on this release alone, which, of course, it's more fun to look at like some of these individual things. We'll follow up with the changelog on our docs as well. But something that's new, and I already highlighted last week, is that you now have additional migrations for your testing libraries. So those migrations from TestingG to AssertJ, those are in there. Migrations from EasyMock to Mockito are in there. And the migrations from Hamcrest to JUnit. All of those you can now get with the latest stable release of Rewrite Testing Frameworks 2.24 to really maybe over Christmas when all your colleagues are around, surprise them and get them onto a different testing library when they get back from holidays, which should help improve your code quality. Also new is that we have some recipes for folks that are a fan of Lombok, where if you want to get rid of some generated boilerplate, those getters and setters that you have throughout your code base, we now have recipes that swap those out for just the getter annotations on the fields, which is quite neat. There was a ticket open for these, I think, for over a year or so, year and a half. But it's now been picked up through a community member. Timo A has helped us out there. And now we have those recipes available, and you can use them through the latest versions of Rewrite Migrate Java. So, pretty neat stuff. So check those out, and of course, there's many more things that went into this release. So
Oh man, this just
check it
reminded me
out.
how I really need to go back and finish our Lombok support in the parser. My proof of concept ended up being more of a proof of concept than an actual finished, ready to go, fully well tested thing. I saw the road stretching out before me to get to true perfect Lombok support, and well, just got waylaid. But now that I'm back from traveling and such, hopefully I can get Lombok support in a better place by by the end of the year would be great. But we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
The holidays have a way of distracting you from work with family and peace, light, and happiness, and all of that other stuff.
I have very good news for you.
Oh
So
yeah, what's
while you
that?
were out, Amishra has
Oh,
dove into the details there and found the issue. The issue is not as much in your code as it is in the Lombok annotation processor. He's
uh-huh.
already looking into a fix on that end and a workaround on our end. So
That's
that should
pretty
be pretty
cool.
good.
Yeah, nice,
And we have
nice.
the issue replicated with the unit test as well, such that it should be very easy to dive into from here. So
Very cool. Love to see that that some progress was made in my absence. That's like the perfect Christmas gift right there. Of like that task that was on your list, like mentally weighing you down. Someone else just handled that. That's like my favorite kind of gift.
oh, yeah, especially like when traveling and you can't get to everything, and then to find out that it's been done. That's just the best.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Mishra.
So that, like I said, there's going to be tons more that you can discover in the new release, but there's also been some updates on the front of videos and podcasts that have come out. So if you want to learn more about automating code and refactoring with OpenRewrite via the Text Strong webinar, then you can
Mhm.
watch this one where Jonathan goes into more details on exactly that. I'll share the link in the chat as well. And there's going to be a bunch more coming up similarly. So if you want to learn more about code refactoring and how that is more than an AI problem, then there is a podcast from the InfraPod that you can listen to, where you can, again, listen to Jonathan describe and talk with Ian and Tim about large-scale automations and the role that AI can play in those changes. Also new is that there is the Fuji podcast number 63, where we're going to dive into keeping your applications secure by upgrading your Java versions and what reasons folks might have sort of lagging in their updates there. And Jonathan has a role in this video about halfway through, as well as some other experts within the industry, each giving their perspective on how to keep your applications up to date. So pretty neat stuff. And then you, Sam, your video's out as well. I don't think we've
Yeah,
shared it before.
I love. Don't you just love the thumbnail they chose of me? They definitely captured my good side, all the neck fat looking up from below, like some kind of like tortured creature. But the content is good, even if it comes at the expense of my face.
You can see Brian keep a safe distance as well in the
Yeah, he
background.
was smart. He knew where the camera was and had the right like body
Oh,
positioning. But me, the sucker over here, typing away on the clicky clacking on the laptop keyboard with the camera pointed right up at me. I was not so prepared. But it's
if
a
I've
good
learned,
talk.
yeah, if I've learned one thing is to make good friends with the photographer at conferences, and then you get nice headshots that you can use for all kind of purposes. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah. I actually did know some of the photographers because in the past I did work at Gradle. So now I'm just racking my brains trying to figure out what I did to hurt them. No, it's just that one thumbnail was unflattering. I got quite a few other nice like action shots of me looking smart and authoritative on
mm-hmm,
stage, and it was like, wow, that guy probably knows what he's talking about based upon just the wise gesticulations and poses.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so all good. So if you want to watch this talk, then you can follow the link that I just shared in the chat here as well. Now, looking ahead, of course, in the new year, we'll have our own conference, the Code Remix Summit. And we're also going to have that hackathon that we discussed here before, where you can bring your laptop, bring your projects, and we will try to get you, patching things left and right, upgrading things that you got stuck on for some reason, and we'll get you going. And like I said, we have a really stellar cast of speakers already. So if you've been across the conference circuit, you probably know quite a few of these folks already. And we're quite pleased to be able to present all of them to you at our own conference in Miami. And if you want to register, then we have a form, and I'll share the link here as well. And we also have a promotion code that you can get and use to get $300 off. So that's pretty good. Now, if you can't wait all the way until May to see something about Open Rewrite in Miami, then you can also go to a meetup that will be held next week. So if you go to this link, there's a meetup of the Miami Java user group, where Jonathan will present on the state of AI in large-scale automated refactoring.
This is a good presentation. I've seen this content. I've delivered some of this content as recently as a few hours ago, and there's some really neat things that Jonathan has to show off about how you can pair together deterministic tools like Open Rewrite and recipes with the fuzzier world of these language models to enjoy the strengths of both together. So definitely recommend checking this out. But if you're not in Miami, well, we're definitely going to have more content coming out along that theme, so you won't be bereft of that for long.
Mm-hmm. So that's it in terms of updates for this past week. But we've also been looking back a bit across the year, and it's been really neat to see that we have done 25 releases over the past year.
Not
Very
bad,
much
not bad, Tim.
on par with what you would expect if you do a release every 2 weeks. So I'm glad
The
that
math
we
checks out.
mostly managed. And then also, if you look across our recipe catalog, we have more than doubled the number of recipes that we've had.
It's crazy.
Ever since the start of the year. So I remember starting out presenting on Open Rewrite and Modern, I think 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. By then there were like 700, 800 recipes available.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the start of this year, we had somewhere around like 1,300 recipes. So that's again already double from what I started with. And now at the end of this year, we have doubled yet again.
Yeah, if we can just maintain this doubling, soon we'll have more recipes than there are atoms in the known universe or something in just a few short decades.
It's should be interesting to follow along. Yeah.
We'll see how long we can Moore's law the recipe growth.
So yeah, no, we are very pleased, of course, with all the help that we've had from folks in the community, helping out, writing these recipes, contributing back to the project. Also, our friends at other companies who develop their own suite of recipe libraries and we then are able to bring in. So it's just been a ton of fun, yeah, working on this, seeing it grow, and helping it grow even further still. So
absolutely,
yeah, thanks all.
Yeah, thanks everyone for who's contributed recipes and done your part to automate a little bit of the tedium out of software development. And speaking of automating tedium out of software development, we're coming in with this week's main topic, following up on yet last week's topic, where we kind of live coded a remove unused dependencies recipe and came up with some unit tests, which we got it passing. Which I think it's still passing because I don't think I've really messed with it since then, but maybe I'll run that just to be sure. And so, like all code, once we have a handful of unit test cases passing, it's done, and we can ship it to production and don't have to worry about it anymore, right? Like everything's perfect. It passes 5 whole unit tests I came up with. Well, that would be nice. That might be nice. But in the real world, or at least in my own lived experience, the handful of things I come up with to test a recipe with rarely stand up or are rarely representative of the full breadth and complexity that is out there in the real world. So I think the next step in this journey that we're on of recipe authoring and deployment is the step that we don't that is so important, but that we don't necessarily talk a whole lot about in the documentation or in other venues, because it's like we just kind of say, hey, here's how you write a unit test very prescriptively. Here's how you write a recipe. Here are the best practices. And then it's like, well, once you've done that, there's still the delta, the gap between that and something that's really ready to make automated changes across, 100,000 repositories without making any mistakes. And we just say, yeah, go test it on some real repositories. So let's actually just do that. Let's show what it's like to test this recipe on real repositories, and to exercise it, find the shortcomings, find all of the things that I glossed over in my simplified test cases. Which, yes, they are still passing. Cool, didn't regress anything or whatever. So I'm starting from a known point. And so the first thing I'm going to do is run this recipe on a collection of repositories from that I've just copied from the Modern SAS. I copied the default group, cloned it locally, and for recipe development, I like to use the CLI, because then we can easily connect a debugger and rerun the recipe locally as we proceed with development. So let's do that. So just to get started with, I have the Modern IDE plugin installed, so I can just right click on the recipe name and and what happened to my mark recipe is active? Oh, is it? Oh, because this is the test class. I right
You're
click
looking
on the
at the
name of the
test.
recipe and can mark it as active. I can't right click on the name of the recipe's unit tests and mark those as the active recipe, because obviously the unit tests are not the active are not a recipe. Oh, the joys of
I
doing things live, huh?
I did add a nice thing over the weekend where you
Oh,
can
what's that?
now also on a refaster recipe right click and say I want to run this one as the active recipe.
Excellent,
So,
excellent. Yeah, that was something we were missing before. So, in this directory, I have already cloned several. Close this. I've already cloned several repositories. I haven't checked in advance much about these repositories, so I don't know if they actually have any unused dependencies or not. But we'll just mod run the recipe and see what we get. So I can just say mod run dash dash active recipe, since I already via the IDE plugin specified remove unused dependencies as active. It sorted out, making sure that the class path was correct, and all of those things. So it's very easy to just bounce back and forth between the IDE and running the recipe with CLI. So I'll have to go load up the recipe, and then I'll run on each of these repositories, and then we shall see what it do. Personally, my bets are that the first kind of category of, and most important category of shortcoming in this recipe, I am expecting us to see are removing dependencies that are not really unused. I'm just not totally confident that we are checking that as thoroughly, and to not have any false positives or false negatives, false unused's. Um, and that will be the first and probably most important category of problem to resolve. There might also be, I don't know, some coding problems, a null pointer exception or something in there. All right, we've got results back from our first repository. We're going to take a look at those. And very first thing I see in this repository is a whole bunch of dependencies being removed. And so maybe this is a huge win if all of these are really unused, and that this is just not needed. But this seems like a
I
lot,
have my
I
doubts
would
that
really
none of these dependencies are used.
Yeah, I would be really,
Let's
really surprised if none of
yeah,
these dependencies were used. So yeah, let's remove the entire dependencies block from several of these projects. Now, hey, maybe
at
this was
least
a case where someone was copying and pasting a POM around that just had a bunch of stuff they didn't actually need, that maybe should have been an apparent. But I'm willing to bet that this is a shortcoming of the recipe. So I think we shall have some good some valuable debugging from this exercise right out the gate. And if I check out this next patch file that's coming back from another project, okay, this is this is good. I see here
Better.
that it didn't remove every single dependency this time, because it would be a next level of incompleteness or erroneousness in the recipe if by remove unused dependencies we'd accidentally written a remove all of the dependencies sort of
It
recipe.
technically did remove all unused dependencies, so
It just removed a
we're
lot of other
halfway
stuff
there.
too. Exactly,
But
exactly. So
we're
this will
somewhat
be,
more selective, but not very, I would
yeah,
say.
somewhat more selective, but not giving me a lot of confidence that this is really correct and well exercised yet. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out and see where we're at. Sometimes we got a few errors while running the recipe, so these results are incomplete. And once this is done, I think we'll do that first, because errors like this are going to be indicative of, a null pointer, like an exception being thrown while running the recipe. Maybe it couldn't download a dependency. Maybe it was a null pointer exception. But either way, the results were at least partially compromised by having run into whatever those errors were. So I think we'll begin by fixing that. And then we'll go investigate and figure out which of these dependencies are really unused, and why, and kind of like see whatever it is we are
Mm.
missing.
And of course,
Eh,
it does show the value of having the tools to be able to run these recipes very quickly, get that feedback in a couple seconds as you develop, and then refine. Because, yeah, if you would do this without the plugin, you would have to package up your recipe, then send it off, run it on a bunch of projects, wait 10 minutes for the LST to build, and it'd be like
Yeah, yeah,
a
and
drag.
using exactly. And if you're using just the open source plugins that can't take advantage of the pre-built LST files serialized to disk, then we would not only have to spend the time to run the recipe on each of these projects, but reparse them from scratch. And this exercise, which has currently been going on for 4 or 5 minutes, well, parsing the LSTs for each of these 10-ish repositories, 10 to 12 repositories, would be um, a lot longer than running the actual recipe. So yeah, the Modern CLI is a commercial product, but it is free for open source developers. So if you have a, I guess while this runs, I can just go ahead and show you how to go get the CLI. Incidentally, so if you are an open source developer working on open source projects and want to get access to the CLI for free to do recipe development, you can just log into app.modern.io, our public tenant, bringing together all of the open source recipe catalog with all the open source projects we've ingested from across GitHub and GitLab and what have you. And you can come down here to this help button and download the CLI either as a jar or a native binary for your platform of choice, and then so long as you have it connected to app.modern.io, you can use it to run recipes on any of the repositories that we have ingested from across open source. So if you have an open source repository or a whole bunch of open source repositories that you want to run recipes on or use the CLI on, and they're not already in here, just come into the community Slack and let us know. It's no problem for us to add new projects to the list of open source projects that we parse.
And of course, the neat thing there is that, say that you want to develop a recipe for some Spring project. Of course, you wouldn't be able to use the CLI on your own Spring project, but we do have all these Spring projects and all the Spring guides in there and all the Spring Cloud Config projects. All those sample projects are there, so that you'll probably be able to develop your recipe using these tools to help speed you up, and
Mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
be able to deploy it on your own projects, even if you don't have a CLI option there.
Totally, totally. Let's see. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, so this was a Gradle project. Glad to see that we're getting some Gradle project changes coming in here, uh, and I'm glad that it isn't completely removing absolutely everything from these. Now I see a few that look like there may be runtime, maybe a runtime dependency that was listed as a compile time dependency. So it's not finding any usages. It's not finding any usages of this type within within the source code, but it does need to be there at runtime. So I'm kind of thinking aloud, how, like, we could have like a something hard coded, which I don't love, like an allow list of kind of like, hey, if you see, SLF for J, like we could have a list of
Yeah.
things where it's like we just have to, the recipe would have hard coded that, hey, if you see, SLF for J, log for J12, and it's in the compile class path, but doesn't have any usages of it, just move that one to the runtime class path. It's not actually unused; it's just used at runtime. And so, rather than incorrectly in this case, I think removing the dependency that is needed at runtime, how can we just make it a runtime dependency rather than a compile time dependency? Um, hmm. Yeah, I'm
I
not sure
think
if we
that
can really do for particularly for classes like or things like log for or like SLF for J type stuff that has runtime bindings. If we can do better than a hard coded list, since if there really is no reference to it in source code, but it does need to be there at runtime, well,
I think we
then it's expected that we wouldn't find any references to it in the source code. What do you
I
think,
think we
Tim?
could.
Any ideas other than a hard coded list of runtime of runtime scope dependencies?
I think there's likely a limited amount of ways in which, of course, you'll have the SLF4J API and then the
Mm-hmm.
various providers,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that those providers get loaded. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
that uses the service loader mechanism, but that is something that we could look into. Like if that is available within the dependency that we are evaluating, then
Hmm.
maybe it's loaded in a way that you shouldn't just exclude it in this way.
That's an interesting point. That maybe we could inspect, like we could, like if we go look at the binary for SLF for J or whatever, there is probably some metadata in there um, about what it about service loading. Yeah, I don't happen to know off the top of my head if SLF for J does. So if I go look at my Maven local and I just go find this jar and open it up, org SLF for J. So if I go look at one of these guys, I don't think it really matters what version. They're probably all the same. Okay, so that's just a palm. Palm isn't going to say it. But inside the jar, does one of these have a jar in it? Yeah, here we go.
Yep.
Here's a jar for an SLF for J version. If I go and look inside of this SLF for J jar, will it say in the manifest?
Mm,
No. Maven.
no, that's just I think packaging
That's
details.
typical stuff. Yeah, it might be that SLF for J in particular just happens to be loaded through a different mechanism than the service loader. I am
It is one
right.
of
Here's just the
those
class
needs to
files.
load very early on.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right. The things that do load through a service loader mechanism, we could, I think, open up the jar and look inside it for like that manifest entry that says, this has a service of such name, and then anything that had a service could uh, could uh,
Yep.
could be like
Not
that.
be removed. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if we could use for like these SLF for J projects, if we could use the presence of an SLF for J API dependency as as uh, as a sign there. Okay, anyway, so we finished running all of the recipe on all of these repositories. And yeah, there's an estimate that it would take an additional 30 minutes to run this had we had to reparse all of these, had to reparse all of the sources and all of these projects into LSTs. So, using the CLI for that, we only had to spend 9 minutes running the recipe as opposed to, 40 minutes parsing and running the recipe. So the first thing I want to look at is the errors that we got when running the recipe. So let's go do a mod study to produce that data table and go see what the errors were and, go fix an NPE or something.
Yeah. Is this typical on your machine?
Yeah, it just took us a second longer. I don't know. I always just figure that that there's always time dilation when you're presenting live. You're just very conscious of every second passing. Okay, let's see what we got. So it looks like we have some null pointer exceptions. Types in use is null. And remove unused dependencies, line 108. So let's go take a look at that. Okay, so I guess in this case, project to types in use.get, project. So in this case, this is in use function was called on a project that we did not have an entry for, which is interesting. So I would have thought that we would, during the scanning phase, put an entry in there for every project, but maybe there were. Well, let's go figure out why this is null. Because one thing that we can do here is easily put a breakpoint in this recipe and have the CLI run it again on just one of the projects which had problems in order to debug and try and figure out why this guy is null. So let's see. So this particular row for this particular problem was from, which repository was it from? This was from, so we had several of these from AWS SaaS Boost, but Apache Maven Doxia had the same problem. Yep, exactly the same problem in only one file. So I think I'll go debug the recipe on just this project so that, we just have fewer hits to, hits to do. So I'm going to say mod run. And then this was, Apache Maven Doxia. So I'll just run on that folder. Active recipe, JVM debug.
Now this will prompt you to connect the debugger. And maybe we can make the breakpoint conditional on it being null. That
Yes.
might be helpful.
Gotta get that set up while we wait for, let's see. And I'll go ahead and create the debug config. Oh, I already have one. No, Maven debug, that's port 8000. I believe the port here is going to be port 5005. Is it? Yep, now it is waiting for us. So I can go ahead and attach my debugger on port 5005, and then recipe loading and execution will continue up to the point that our breakpoint gets hit.
And of course, we expect it to be triggered, I think, already.
Looks like I maybe lost my connection for a minute, but have come back. I couldn't tell if it was me freezing or Tim freezing, but I think it was on my end.
I think it's both. I also saw myself refresh.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, the important thing is that we're back. Okay, so now in the debugger, the Java project marker that we're looking up is for this project name Doxia Modules, which is coming from Doxia Modules here. And if I look inside of our accumulator, we have project name. But we didn't come up with anything for Doxia modules. And so is this maybe the parent POM that aggregates them all together? Like if I go and look at this Doxia modules project, and this is under projects, default, Apache, Doxia. Is it this root?
It appears to be it's not the root project, but is a subroot which doesn't itself contain any code.
So let's see, so you were in Doxia modules. Okay, so it's this guy. I see. Okay, so it does have a little source folder, just as an XML file inside it. Okay, so I guess fair enough. There were no types in use. There was no code here, so this worked out to be null. That makes sense. So I guess what I should just say that if that obviously if types in use is null, let me just put a little guard around that, and fair enough. So there's that. Let's see, is there anywhere else that we need to? Okay, so this is adding one, so that's fine. All right, cool. So Tim, do you remember if I even actually need to go here and like click set active recipe again to get the rebuilt, the amended version of this here? I always like do it out of habit, but I can't actually remember if it's necessary or not.
I don't think it's necessary because the paths will be just the same. It's just compiled classes.
Right, because it's just going to point to the output directory of the IDE in this case. So when I clicked that, it was purely superstition on my part rather than something necessary. Yeah, ritualistic. It's like I feel like I should click set active again, not so much I actually needed to.
It does help, like if you're switching between recipes, maybe you have two implementations or things. So like myself, you're switching between 5 tasks in any given moment. Then it does help to be sure what you're running. One thing that I found is that we don't have a way to tell you what the active recipe is until you start running it.
And then it could be a little bit too late. Yeah, it's gonna both take a few seconds, or sometimes is a little bit. It takes longer than I would like to load the active recipe. I would like for that to be faster. Anyway, we'll figure that out at some point. Okay, so now we're running our amended version of the recipe, and at this point, I would expect to see. We got an error. Did I need to hit rebuild on this? Maybe I'll just tell you to recompile it just in case. Run that one more time. So I was expecting that we would not get that error. So let me just double make sure that we're running the updated code, and then we could proceed with further debugging and fixing. Tim, what console color scheme do you like to use? I have struggled to find a console color scheme that looks nice with all of the just in general, but also the colors we use highlights them. Like I like the look of the blue here, but I do find the contrast with my grayish background is a little bit low. So whenever we have text in blue, it's a little bit harder to read than I would like. So I'm curious, what color scheme do you like for your consoles when you're like using them in CLI and other tools?
So I have 2 presets. One is am I presenting or not? And if I'm presenting, then it's a white background and black as letters.
That makes sense.
It's what shows up best on a Beamer.
That makes
for
sense.
myself, I use the default Ubuntu purple-ish background, but I make it semi-transparent.
Okay, all right. A little semi-transparency is always nice.
So you can just see like what's underneath if you're following along, or keep your eye on 3 things just running across each other.
Yeah. All right, so now we did successfully get rid of that null pointer exception. So that's already one useful result achieved from this debugging exercise. Now I'm kind of curious, what's going to happen if we apply this patch and then actually try to build it? I bet it won't work because it sure looks like I don't know why I'm typing this out when I could have just copied and pasted it. Oh, yeah, see, that's why I should have just copied and pasted it. Oh, well, it's also because I'm using a Unix style terminal, but it CLI detected Windows, so it was helpfully put a backslash in there when my actual terminal would want a forward slash. Okay, cool. So we applied the patch file, and so now if I try to just build it again, is it gonna? Oh, I don't want to re-download. I just want you to rebuild. So I'm curious if we're going to run into compilation errors or not. Like we've already identified that like removing or totally that like some of the SLF for J stuff at least should still be there on like the runtime class path, even if it isn't on the doesn't need to be on the compile class path. So I'll be really curious to see if this still compiles or not, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I think this is a good exploration of some of the practical realities of trying to create a recipe that can account for just the sheer variation that exists within software projects in order to be something that you could just reliably run across all your code. It it can be hard to get something to that level of quality bar, and there's just no substitute for iterating it in real world conditions to get something battle tested enough in order to. Yep, that's not too surprising. I'll be curious about what kind of compilation errors we get in this log to maybe get a sense of what we should not have removed. So let's see, what were we not able to compile? Could not find symbol sync event attributes and Doxia simple sync wrapper. Okay, so the sync event attributes is one. So like we could take this class name and maybe is that is that all that it was complaining about? Like all of these are, I guess not all of them are about. One is about sync, some are about sync event attributes. A lot of syncs in here, and then default doxia.java is and doxia.java are where we're getting these errors. So that gives me some hints for where I can put some conditional breakpoints in this recipe in order to see why this is happening. So first up, let's go take a look at why when we're first recording the types that are in use, when we are looking at doxia.java. So whenever we're looking at doxia, and that condition may be a little bit overly broad, but let's run this again. Oh, did I get rid of my other breakpoint? I don't need that other breakpoint anymore, or whatever those breakpoints are. Let's do that again. Yeah, let's see. So what I want to do, I want to run the recipe on our old LST, not the new one that we made from. So here we go. So we'll just re-download the old LST from Modern. Oh, re-downloading a bunch of old LSTs from Modern. I'm just going to CD into here. So I think I already got this one. Oops. Okay, cool. So now we've got our old LST back from before we applied our bad changes, and we can go run. Now I CG'd into this directory, so I'm going to put a period for the current directory, same active recipe, JVM debug, and we'll wait for this to connect and go take a look. Now I think it will be. I'll be very interested to see what we see here for what types are in use within this file. Will it be like will we have an accurate accounting of the types that are in use? Okay, here we go. And if not, why? That could be a whole interesting bucket of worms or an interesting thread to pull upon. All right, so debugger connected, waiting for the recipe to run to the point where we can hit the breakpoint.
Yes, of course, it's always fun to like write a recipe, think of all the edge cases that you can think of, and cover those with unit tests, and then try to discover all the different ways in which your colleagues can surprise you in the ways that they've done
Yes,
things. And then it's just no substitute for the real world.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we've now hit this breakpoint, and just to double check, we are looking at flexmark doxia link resolver Java. So I'm just gonna be a little bit more specific rather than say contains. I'm gonna say ends with doxia.java, and let's just continue, and then we'll get to that. There's default doxia.java. Okay, fine. Here we go. Here's doxia.java. This is the one that we saw from the previous guy. Had removed. I should have done a better job of like writing this down. So we saw that in. Oh wait, I did have it written down here. So that this guy has a class named sync coming from somewhere else in the project, and that symbol was not found. So why would that be? So let's see. If I go, we have now the types in use are recorded here, and we see that the types in use are recorded as just these guys. And I'm a bit curious to see what this source file looks like, and I could go open it up, but I have the LST right here, so I can just say cu print all and get back the complete source file as a string and see that, so there's the import for sync right up here. And if I go here, if I just print this out, what is the deal? Okay, so, okay, yeah, so there's sync. It's used as a method parameter on this parse method, so that's why it needs to be imported. But in our debugger, we see the types in use has 3 declared methods. And it looks like the method parameters, the method parameter types has come back with an unknown type for this doxia type. So I'm not sure why that would be. That looks like maybe a problem with the parser and the type mapping that this is coming back unknown. So now there's both a question of what do we do if there are unknown types? We should probably just not make any changes, because if there's unknown types, kind of like all bets are off. We were not able to achieve the level of accuracy and parsing that you would want for something like this. So I think there's both a matter of protect the recipe itself from this mistake or from this problem. Or let's see, what the best way to be? Do we see unknown as a type in use? Doxia parser not found. No. So I guess maybe I should just look at. I guess I should just look through these types to see if there are if the unknown type appears anywhere. And if the unknown type appears anywhere, then we should just be like, nope, we're just not going to make any changes here. And then I could separately go investigate why why we were not able to find this type. I have a hunch that that this sync type probably comes from another project within this multi-module build of Maven Doxia, and so I
It does
wonder if
indeed.
this is what's that?
It does indeed. Yep.
It does indeed, yeah. So I wonder if this is a case where there are. Where when we have built it, like we didn't like run a Maven clean install first, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and usually that shouldn't be necessary to do, but if the project isn't set up depending on exactly how the Maven POM is set up, that may or may not be necessary, I suppose. So I guess I am curious, if I stop this for now and I were to go do a Maven clean install, and then I did this again, would I see the same thing? And I suspect that I won't, because we'll have all the binaries then in our Maven local, and the class path will be, further fleshed out. But I would. I don't care about your license check, man. Come on, I'm just trying to compile the thing.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
I've
think this
I've seen
this
this trigger on the .modern folder that we add for the LSTs, of course.
oh, so helpful, so helpful. Wait, dash X is how you do it in. It'd probably be like a D skip check or something. I don't know off the top of my head
It's
what you need.
rat.skip.
Rat.skip like this.
Yep.
Yeah, so this points to something I can do better in the recipe. And then how can we make the parsing of Maven projects work better? Oh my. Did I
Is
not?
it still with the changes applied?
Oh yeah, that's right. Because I just downloaded the old LST, but I didn't actually put the repository itself back in the pre-patch state. So let's go run that again. And then I bet if I go and rebuilt the LST from this, that it would then succeed. Yeah, what do you think? What can we do to be better about that? Because I mean, in our own mass ingest, do we call Maven clean install before we must not,
No, we
no,
don't.
because that would be
And
expensive.
it shouldn't be necessary. But I do know that there's been some reports of modules being built not in the build order you would expect, and
Interesting.
that could lead to if you
Yeah.
don't build that API before you run and build the modules, then of course those types will not be available.
Right. 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 All right. So we can try to produce an updated LST from this, and then check to see if we still see that unknown type in the LST after that, and that would be, I suppose, our smoking gun about about the order that we're building the LSTs for the projects in, or something like that being the relevant thing here. Yeah, then we can separately go. Maybe while this runs, I go take a look at. If there are any unknown types. So thing here in this Java types in use, I kind of want to recursively check all the types for unknowns. Maybe the thing to do is, where would be the best place to check that? I suppose we could check it in the, it could be per project, right? So one project might have unknown types and another might not. So we don't necessarily want like a Boolean flag for like the entire recipe run. But if we have, uh, yeah, so I'll think about where to put the safeguards about there being unknown or failed types for this. Let's see, how's this build log looking? Doop-a-doop-a-doo. It's going through. It's building the project. Yeah, there's a reactor build order. And there's a parse error with HTML tools.java for whatever reason. But we finished parsing that. So it should be almost done. Very cool. All right, so now I guess the final thing we'll do is we'll run this again, and we'll hit our breakpoint in that doxia.java file and see if that type is still unknown or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's perhaps convenient that we hit a problem with the framework or with the parsing during this live demonstration, as it allows us to highlight to our viewers when when it's a recipe problem you should handle yourself, and when maybe it is a bug report to come to us with. So let's see. I still have my breakpoint in here, right? Yep. Still have the conditional breakpoint looking for doxia.java. And so let's go in here and see if we still have that unknown type now that we built everything in advance. I
Of course,
suspect that we
if you
won't.
want to specifically look for unknown types, we also have a recipe to help you there. Sometimes we
There
find
is.
that folks will have trouble with their projects parsing, or they will not yet be using the Lombok support that we added, and that might lead to unknown types. So then we have a recipe to explore that. And we're also looking to expand that with a data table.
Yeah, look at this. Immediately, the number of types in use is more than it was before. Like, I remember before there was like 7. There's like 7 types in use, and in here there are a few more. But will the declared methods still have? Nope, they still have an undefined parameter. So even having built those things in advance, we still got an unknown type out of here for that other type coming from the same project. I think that's very interesting and something that I will look into more. But for now, I think this is where we can end our live debugging stream for this recipe. For this recipe enhancement. So thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully, you found it instructive or interesting to see me stumble through the process of bringing a recipe from its humble beginnings as something unit tested through the crucible of real code into hopefully being a battle tested and reliable and useful part of everyone's routine code maintenance.
And with that, I think we are near the end of this year of doing episodes of the Code Remix Weekly.
We are. This is the last one of the year. Is that right? Are we doing one next week?
No. Well, next week it's Christmas, so you're welcome to join me, but I'll be with my family.
Are you gonna have live stream your family Christmas for everyone?
Probably not. Probably not.
That's probably healthy. Yeah.
Just for context, I have 6 nieces and nephews, and
Oh,
they're
wow.
all under the age of 9. So
So do you have 6 nieces and 6 nephews, or nieces plus nephews summed to 6?
A total of 6.
Total of 6. Okay, cool.
But so I don't think that would bode well for a live stream.
It would be a different kind, probably more shrill children playing and toys and things, which could be fun in its own right, but not in this venue perhaps.
Mm-hmm. So but it's been really unique to do these Code Remix sessions. I had a quick look. I think we're up to 52 sessions in the past year, which would be quite kind of what you would expect with 1 a week. But I'm surprised we've kept it going as much. It's very...
Somehow we keep managing to come up with new topics. So good for us, Tim.
Okay, and then of course you stumble upon additional work that you have to.
There's no shortage of additional work to stumble upon. I don't want to be like sticking, averting my gaze from uncomfortable things, but I just seem to have a talent for finding bugs wherever I look.
It's always good. So thanks to everyone for joining us, and we very much look forward to 2025 and see if we can once again double our recipe catalog. I mean, it's something to strive for.
Let's do it.
3,000 recipes should be good.
Should we call doubling the recipe catalog every year Tim's Law, you think?
I think it will very quickly start to fail. I'm not sure how we're gonna do 3,000 recipes. That's 10 a day. That alone, in terms of
That's
reviews,
an
is gonna be.
intimidating number. Yeah.
We should get that code authorship on all of recipes even smoother, and then it should
Yes,
be good.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Looking forward to that. So thanks all for joining us, and then I hope to see you in the new year.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Almost. Merry Christmas, etc.
All good. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.